Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Health Tech Entrepreneurs Meetup. Today, our speaker is Dr. Sandy Williams, and the topic is It's Not You, It's About Your Audience. You can check out our YouTube channel for our past recordings, and this recording will be posted there as well. So before I introduce and hand things off to Sandy, we can all introduce ourselves. So I will go around, I will go down the column to my right. And so when I call on you, please unmute. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, let us know what you're doing, what you're working on. If there's anything you're looking for, or if there's anything you can help out with, this is a great time to mention it. So I will start. Hi, my name's Neo. I am the founder and CEO of Neurosonics Medical. We're developing a minimally invasive neurosurgical device using therapeutic ultrasound. I'm also the Vice President of Business Development at the MDC Studio, and I'll let Gil describe that a little more. And I'm also an associate for the Verte family of funds, which focuses on high growth businesses located in opportunity zones. So Gary, you next.
Sure. Gary Fletcher, I'm the founder of R&DDX Solutions, provides product development consulting to startups and larger companies focused on medical device and specifically blood collection and stabilization for diagnostic testing, but also blood collection for cell therapy applications. The other hat I wear is as an expert witness in medical device patent litigation cases. So that's me, Gary Fletcher.
Awesome. Great to have you. Gil?
So I'm an engineer by training and by, I guess, life experience. So recently I was on the faculty at the University of Maryland College Park. I founded a few high-tech companies. I founded MDC about 5 years ago to try to bridge the gap between med tech inventors and the market. So we work with surgeons, neurologists, anesthesiologists, etc., most of whom have device inventions. So devices fit well with engineers. And our model is to work with them, understand what they want to build, to try to assess if there's a market for it, and if so, build it, create a startup company, and spin that company out. So we are a startup studio based around engineering of projects, prototypes.
Great, thank you. Jonathan?
Hi, Jonathan Klaus. I'm a registered nurse, live here in Baltimore, and just generally here to learn and hear more about the space and what's going on out there. Thank you.
Awesome. KJ? Okay, Lena?
Hey, I'm here from the East Coast, from the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and I'm in the tech sector for healthcare currently, but I'm just here to learn.
Awesome, welcome. I'm going to skip over Sandy for now. Tineha? All right, I will introduce Sandy and then hand it off to you. So Dr. Sandy Williams is a biomedical engineer, marketer, certified social media strategist, and president of Access Biomedical Solutions, which is a consultancy focused on empowering biotech and medtech companies to grow and accomplish their goals. Sandy received her bachelor's degree in metallurgical engineering from National Technical University in Athens, and then she got her PhD in biomedical engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology and completed her postdoctoral training at the University of Minnesota. So Sandy, I'll hand it off to you now.
Thank you, Now. Thanks so much for the invitation. I think this is a really fun group, and I've really enjoyed the conversations of entrepreneurs, because startups is it's a difficult proposition, right? So all the help we can get, it's always welcome. So I'm just gonna share my screen here. So I have kind of a few slides here to kind of guide us a little bit in our discussion. But I also wanted to be more of a discussion and not just presentation style. So if you have questions, your own examples, your own experiences, don't feel like you have to wait till the end to go through them. So why are we talking about this, right? Like, why is so important to keep in mind that what we're doing, what we're communicating is about the audience? And there's some tidbits that have been in the media and the news about the ever shortening attention spans. And recently, actually, a few years ago, the BBC said this is a myth. There's really no data behind this, but there is this Microsoft research report, and I've put a couple of links there at the bottom if you guys want to check it out, that has found that our attention spans have shortened. So take it with a grain of salt, but I think we've all experienced, we've been bombarded with information, right, every day. So we have to prioritize and be selective about where we spend our time. And if something is confusing, not clear, not really resonating with us, we just move on very quickly. So that's why I feel it's important to keep in mind, who are we communicating to? And why is it important for startups and entrepreneurs? Well, it's more important for startups. It's important for every company, right? No matter what the size, but for startups, particularly important because you have a small team, right? So when it's a small team, you don't have all the perspectives. You're not seeing really the problems for all the angles. You're approaching it from your own perspective. So a lot of the startups, they're small teams. Maybe it's a founder and a co-founder, or teams of maybe up to 5-10 people, at most. So a lot of times we kind of have blinders on about what we're trying to do, and who cares, who's going to care about our technology, who's going to care about our solution, the product we're developing. So that's why it's even more important to just be very cognizant and continuously thinking about your audience. So I'm going to go through 5 examples. So I picked 5 topics that I see over and over with companies and clients. And I feel like they're important ones, and hopefully they apply to pretty much everybody who is a startup entrepreneur. So we're going to start with a very important one, which is your company name. And it could even translate into your product name, right? So a lot of us, when you start a company, you have to name your company. And when a product is being developed, a lot of times we name the product or the technology. So what are some of the things to keep in mind here? I want to start with a book that I have found really compelling and really an important and valuable resource. And I would highly recommend it to all of you to check it out. And you see at the top here, you are nuts to name your company or product without consulting this book first. That is the testimonial. And I have to agree with that. I thought this was a great book, a great overview of what are some of the things to keep in mind as you're naming your company. So I'll give you the gist, right, of the framework that's being described in the book. That doesn't mean you shouldn't check out the book. Absolutely do. But I'll give you the high level framework. So Alexandra, who is a really fun person to listen to and talk with, she has 2 kind of really tests to put your product name through. One is the SMILE test, and the other is the SCRATCH test. So as you're going through naming your company or product, think through these and how they apply. So the SMILE test has to do with, is the name suggestive, right? Does it evoke something about the brand? Are people going to remember it, right? Is there some kind of association with the familiar? Does it, when you say or hear the name of the company, does an image of something pop in your head, right? And what is that image? Does it have legs? And by that, it means, could there be a theme, right? So especially if you're going to have like a family of products, or you want your company to be about a particular theme, that then you can extend to other naming conventions. Can you use it that way? And is it emotional? Does it evoke some kind of emotion in people? Does it move people? Or is it, very dry, for example? And the scratch test are things you definitely want to avoid. So spelling challenged in our space, you probably see that a lot, right? There's going to be a lot of names that you just gonna be scratching your head. How do I spell that? Copycat, they sound very much like other companies and competitors. When the Apple I craze came about, so many companies, so many products were I this, I that, just trying to copy Apple. And it was just horrendous to see, right? Is it restricted? It's the opposite of having legs. Will it limit your future growth? Is it kind of annoying when people hear that? It just kind of rubs you the wrong way. It's not, pleasant to listen to. Is it tame, just super flat and doesn't really evoke any emotion? Cursive knowledge, that's another one we see in our space a lot. Only people who really understand our space, are in our space, would ever be able to say the company name, which, in some ways, some people are like, well, the people we're talking to, they should know what it means. But when you're forming a company, you're going to be interacting with so many different people outside of your space, right? In all kinds of functions. So be cognizant of that and think about it. Do you want them to be so challenged to even, say the name of your company? Hard to pronounce. That will confuse people, right? They're going to be afraid they're going to say it the wrong way, insult you. They'll avoid saying the name. And it's not really going to help your company and them spread the word about who you are and what you do. So I went and picked a few names, and this is not like a name bashing session, but I want to show you some examples of company names that I found, they're not passing the smile and scratch tests. They're kind of failing in several regards sometimes. So a lot of these names, if you see them, you might be, wondering, how do I spell them? Or if you hear the name, you'll think it's spelled one way, but then when you go type it, you won't be able to find the company. So these are challenging names, right? They're not really inspiring anything. They're not memorable. You might hear them and then be like, what was that company again? I don't remember their name. So as a startup, founder or entrepreneur, you already have enough challenges on your plate, right? Why stack the odds against you even more than you need to? So that is kind of the thought here. And just your takeaway, think about where you are as a startup. It's always easier to change your name, your company name, if you choose to, versus when you've built 100, 200 people company and have gotten a lot of market traction. It just becomes harder because you're going to have so much more collateral and things that will be affected if you decide to change the name. So that was one example. That it's a simple one, right? None of these are really hard to do. It's a simple, but it can be an important one. So next, I want to go to another favorite, which is your website homepage. So a lot of startups, you usually have, even if it's a small website, you have a homepage. It could be a one-page website. But here's some of the things to think about. People will typically not read all the words on your homepage, right? So we sometimes dump a lot of information thinking people will just sit there and read paragraphs of text, but they don't. Most of us will just skim through the content, try to find the keywords that are important to us. And some of these data here is showing about 20% of what's on the page is going to be read, which is pretty small, right? Percent overall of the content. And people will give up quickly. They're not going to spend 15, 20 minutes reading something and trying to absorb it and figure out what you're trying to say and make sense of it. So you really have a very limited window of opportunity for people to understand who you are and what you do as a company. So that's important to remember and take advantage of. So I pulled a few examples to kind of show you, the difference. So here's a company, and this is what is called in web development world, the above the fold, right? So when you land on a home page, this is what you see on your screen before you actually scroll down. So if you're looking at this, are you going to have any idea what this company does? I see something about agitation. I see something about bubbles, and I see care diagnostics and therapies. I have no idea what this is about. It's just, it just leaves you puzzled. So if I land here, unless I'm specifically going to take the time and, there's some reason I landed here, I'm just very likely going to go, right? You hit the back button, you're gone. Like, I don't know what this is. It's not what I was looking for. This particular website, when you scroll down, you see this middle banner here. Again, microbubble technologies in healthcare. That's all you're learning. And then the rest of the page, and I cropped it, is the team members. So there's pictures of each team member and their bios. So you can navigate the entire homepage and have no idea what it is they do. So please avoid that, right? You have somebody's attention, somebody landed on your website, is your opportunity to communicate what you do. So don't miss on that big opportunity. Here's another above the fold. So lots of space here, right? A beautiful illustration still tells me nothing about what this company does. I see biometrics and I see prevention. No clue what this is for, what it is about. Is it relevant to me? Is it not relevant to me? Again, likely to bolt. Here's another one. So this is kind of an interesting twist because it's trying to catch your interest, right? And get you intrigued to scroll. So imagine, so it's painting the picture. Imagine what an earlier picture of your heart could mean. Still does not tell you what Caption Health does, right? But you might be intrigued to scroll, right? Instead of leave. And then if you do scroll, you'll see a little bit more and understand the technologies, ultrasound technology, detect disease earlier. But this could be a missed opportunity, right? Because there is lots of software programs. One I use very often is called Hotjar. And what it allows you to do is look at heat maps and scrolling data on your website. So you can install it on your website. Actually, the base version is like a free version. And it'll show you that as you go down the page, fewer and fewer people will actually scroll. So you might get 100% look at the above the fold. When you go to this level, it might have dropped to 50%. So think about it. You have 10 people that went to your website, 5 of them will never see what it is you do. So I consider that a missed opportunity to really communicate who you are and what you do. And here's my final example. This one, I would give them an A. You can imagine the grades for the previous ones. They were not so good. But this one, this is the above the fold. And it has a lot of stuff here, but also lots of white space, right? It doesn't feel overwhelming to read. It's not loaded with text. But just at a glance, you get a pretty darn good idea of who this company is and what they do. Just the picture alone, if you're a dentist, even if you're not a dentist, even the layperson will understand this. So dental AI, I'm seeing here is this a filling? Is it decay? Gum disease, right? Like you can immediately get a very good picture of who they are, what they're doing. There is also social proof, and references of customers and endorsements and things like that to kind of strengthen their message. So if you're going to take the time to put a website together, it's a pretty easy fix. It's a pretty easy change to use the above the fold real estate that you have on your homepage to really communicate your message.
Can I ask a question about that last one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you say this one is the best, And in some ways, I guess the design is good. But what the hell is dental AI? The number one dental AI platform for dentists. So I would argue that the text here is basically nonsense, and I hope the founder of this company is not here. A quest to improve oral health by creating a future that's clinically precise, efficient, and patient-centric. So to me, it says nothing. It has an interesting picture over on the right. I haven't been to the dentist for a while, but I would imagine my old dentist wouldn't know what the hell this is good for. So I don't fault the design and the fact that it has a concise presentation, but dental AI is almost surely nonsense. And this page doesn't do anything to change your opinion of that. So it looks like these are some people who have latched on to linking AI to something where it hasn't been attached before, dentistry. So
Right.
why not, prosthesis AI or whatever the heck you do with your feet, et cetera. I mean, why not just attach AI to anything? And why not? Why are they doing AI? Why not? What happened to machine learning? That's much more catchy, right? Learning, and it's a machine. So I don't like this one, but I got your point. The others, the bubble one was amazingly lousy. Our own website has a picture of an old building with our name on it. Is that catchy? Probably not. But people who are going to look at that picture and leave in 10 seconds, I'm not interested in talking to them anyway.
Mhm.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, this is great. So first of all, I have no affiliation with any of these companies, right? So I purposely pick companies like randomly. I don't know anything about these technologies. I think your point is more about, actually the nature of what they're doing versus what I'm trying to talk about here is, do you get an idea of who they are and what they do, right? So I feel like they are doing that. And then if I'm interested in dental AI, I can dive deeper, right? If I'm not, like Gail here is like, this is garbage, this is nonsense, you're not, right? But you
Wait.
know what it is they do.
Yeah, but I think the most interesting item on this entire page is the menu pricing. That's kind of stunning to me. That means that they have something to sell and maybe people are willing to click and see what it costs. Did you try that item yourself?
I did
No?
not. I should have. Now I'm curious what their pricing is.
Yeah, what do they sell exactly? Yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
these
So
days I'm down on machine learning and AI. If you had given this talk last year, I would have been all enthusiastic.
within 1 year, you lost all interest in AI. Oh no.
Oh, I lose it every decade. The subject gets hyped and attached to, this one, dental AI. Really?
Mhm.
Anyway, sorry, Sandy.
No worries. All right. So next, we're going to jump onto a topic that I know now you are big on, SBIRs. That's actually how we met, serving on a panel together. And this may not apply to everybody, right? But some of you might be thinking about SBIR proposals. So I just want to kind of start by, reviewers know that startups are not perfect, right? Sorry. So what they're really looking for is, do you know your gaps? And do you have a plan for how you're going to close the gaps? Whatever those might be. Maybe you don't have enough staff, maybe you have knowledge gaps, maybe, whatever the situation is, but are you aware, right? Or do you have a lot of blind spots that are going to prevent you from being commercially successful? And the other point here I want to bring forward is, be a little bit strategic, because a lot of proposals, you just, most typically what I see is proposing teams, they just show what they have, right? They just look at what have we done? What do we know? Let's just dump it on a proposal. Versus what do you need to show? What will reviewers be looking for? What are all the elements of bringing commercial success to a company? What are going to be all the steps? So there's a big difference there, because a lot of times you will have gaps in what, the data packages, the information you have that you will need to complement. So let me get a little bit more specific what I mean by that. One is the research plan. So regardless of which agency you're applying to, one thing that you're going to need to put together is a very well, organized research plan. And there's this little sentence here from the NSF. Does the plan incorporate a mechanism to assess success? And that is very, very often missing. So when you're putting together your research objectives and your tasks, there is usually one key component missing or not fully described or described well enough, which is your milestones, deliverables, your metrics, success criteria, whatever you want to call it, your targets, right? So the success targets need to be set up ahead of time. It's not, I'm going to measure this and I'm going to test that and we'll see what we get. We get what we get. Reviewers want to know that you have an idea of what you're expecting and what will success look like and what will failure look like. And if you can have numbers around those, even better. But this is one that oftentimes is missing and reviewers will always catch and comment on. So just address it ahead of time. It's an easy one to do. Potential pitfalls, alternatives. Again, what do you expect to go wrong? And here, be just very honest, be very transparent. Don't just pick something that, is not a real pitfall, like really focus on the big ones. The other part is the commercial opportunity. So this will vary, right? If it's a phase 1 NIH, you don't have to do this. If it's an NSF, you do. For phase 2 across the board, you're going to have to do this. But this is like the really full picture of the commercial opportunity. There is a lot here. Now, all of this is from the NSF, but it's not like a pick and choose. These are all important to address. And even if you don't have all the answers and all the information, at least think about and talk about how you're going to get this information. What is your plan to answer some of these questions? And it really goes beyond. It's essentially a summary of your entire business plan in a way. So your IP, product cost and pricing, your scale up, regulatory reimbursement strategy, clinical strategy. There's just so many components that it's very important to address in a very concise way. And a lot of times we go through proposals and a lot of these are missing. They're just not even mentioned, or they're just mentioned in passing, but not truly addressed. So all of these show up as gaps in a review. And since the solicitations clearly state, what reviewers will look for and what the agencies are looking for, it's truly a missed opportunity not to address them. And put really your best foot forward with your proposal. So I know the MDC group has a lot of experience supporting companies with SBIRs. No, now, is there anything else you would add here? Okay, maybe not. Now, can you hear me? Maybe she's frozen. Okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, great. So next I'm going to go on a topic that again applies to all startups, and that's the investor pitch deck. So investors again know that startups are not perfect, but they want to know if you know what your gaps are, what pieces of information you don't have, and what is your plan for closing them. They also want to know your strengths. What is your competitive advantage? How are you going to stand out in the marketplace? So whatever your strengths are, make sure you're truly flaunting them. They should come across as strengths. This is not the time to be, what do we call it? The Minnesota nice in the Midwest, or, understate what you're really good at. Make sure you're really clear about what your strengths are, what your competitive advantages are. Take credit for your accomplishments. Sometimes investor pitch decks don't really include everything the company has done and accomplished. If you already have a reimbursement strategy, make sure you mention that. Don't just leave it out. There's many opportunities there to make sure you take credit. And the other part is being honest and transparent. Again, investors can tell if you're just trying to make stuff up, right? Versus just being very honest about what you know and what you don't know. That is, again, honestly, the best policy. And when you think about your deck, there's lots of components to it, right? This is just an overview of some of the slides, some of the content that is important to have. So when we're talking about the problem, I have come across a lot of decks where it's not until slide 17 or 18 before they actually mention what problem the technology is trying to solve. So many decks start with the technology, the solution. There's a whole bunch of data slides because founders and entrepreneurs, they're so excited to share, right, what they put together. But until you have really caught somebody's attention and explain to them why they should care, you're going to lose them. If it's slide after slide of data and graphs and charts and showing how great your technology is, before you have even mentioned what problem you're solving, they're going to get a little bored. So again, you're missing an opportunity to get their attention. Then there's your solution, very crisp, very brief. How are you addressing the problem? And there then is the proof, right? What data do you have? What preliminary information have you put together to show that your solution is going to work? For the company, lots of information there, right? How many team members? Do you have any IP? What funding have you raised to date? What is your mission and vision? What do you have around the company structure and accomplishments? Then the team. I've worked with some startups, they have very small teams. So they want to avoid putting a team slide together. And nobody's really going to invest in a company without knowing who is behind the company. So don't be so worried about, we're just, a few people, it's not going to look impressive. You are who you are, right? So be proud of the team you have put together and who's behind the company. And show that because people want to know who is the team. The market opportunity, pulling a chart from a market research report that shows a multi-billion-dollar industry growing fast, it's just not enough, right? So you need to really take that data and bring it down to what numbers are really applicable to your technology, right? Truly obtainable numbers. And break it down and show that you have done your research. You truly understand the market opportunity, what market share you could get, and then the competition, right? Who else has market share? What does the competitive landscape looks like? I see this work not really done very often and to a great extent. They're like, well, we have some competitors, here's a couple of names, but not really a thorough understanding of who else is in the space and how you stack up against them, like very specifically. Whereas, that's where you're going to find your differentiated advantage as well. And that will lead you to the value proposition. What is truly your value proposition? What is unique and different about your company and your technology? And if you cannot articulate that, that is a big red flag, right? So either you don't have a compelling value proposition, or you have not truly spent the time to figure it out and articulate it. And investors are absolutely going to want to know, what is your value prop? And then you have things like your technology and product pipeline. And I come across this one often where, you know, a lot of times the feedback is investors want to see one application, you know, really well vetted and thoroughly explained. If you come to them with a platform technology and say, well, the technology could be applied here, could apply there, could apply everywhere, it just looks like you haven't really thought it through. However, if your technology truly could be applied to other areas, it's important to paint that picture. So don't completely ignore it and not say anything about it. Just say, you know, we're starting with this application. This is our focus, but it could also be expanded, you know, elsewhere, because it's good to show the growth potential and the opportunity overall. The go-to-market strategy, that's one where a lot of companies just pick and choose, again, depending on information they have and resources they have. So they might completely not mention regulatory or reimbursement. They might not really describe their clinical strategy, or, you know, sales, distribution. How do they plan on going to market? So again, kind of fill in the blanks with what you do know. And then where you do have gaps, talk about what your plan is for filling those gaps, you know, whether it's hiring a team to work on this, or the time frame when you plan on addressing that, just so investors know that you're aware and you have a plan. And finally, the ask, right? So what's the investment opportunity? What's going to be the return? How are you going to spend the money, right? What are you going to spend it all on? What did you prioritize, right? Why did you pick these activities to spend the money versus other activities? You always have to prioritize as a startup, right? So just explain the rationale. So the final example is new product development. And this is a pretty intuitive one, right? One thing I see a lot is the technology looking for an application. And that is tough, right? So I see that a lot with academic spinoffs, where some really cool technology has been developed and they're like, well, we think this could have commercial application. So they go looking, right? They go looking for where could it fit? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, right? So you got to be prepared to really be objective about it, and really use this use cases and customer journey. Just map it out. How would it be used? What is the step-by-step kind of process that your customer would be employing the technology, whether it's a medical device, whether it's a healthcare app, you know, whatever it is you're developing, just really think it through, because it's going to help you elucidate what is the unmet need and what are your must-have requirements in your new product development. As you go through new product development, there's always going to be give and takes. There's always going to be compromises, right? You're going to have your must-have list. You're going to have your nice to have. And it's always going to be a negotiation with your development teams. What can be done in phase one? What can be done in future product iteration? So having that clarity to say, when we launch the product, it needs to be able to do X, Y, Z. And those are non-negotiables, because, and that goes to the very last bullet there, build your value proposition first, because those non-negotiables are the key elements of your value proposition and your differentiated advantage. And if you sacrifice those, you don't really have a strong value prop to go to the market with. So having that clarity, instead of saying, we're going to develop the product and then we're going to worry about marketing, and then we're going to hire a marketer and tell them, you know, what is their value prop? That really needs to be done first at the very beginning of the process. Just so you have the clarity and the guidance for your development team on what's important and what's not. then of course, there's some cases when it is all about you, right? So there's the flip side. Talking about your story, right? Your company, your technology origin, the specifics, of your team members, your why. Why did you start this company? How did it come about? Where did the idea originate? What are your company values, your culture? What are the important things for your company? So whoever is going to do business with you is going to work with you. They want to know who are the people, behind the company, behind the technology. Especially nowadays, that's becoming more and more important, right? People want that transparency. They want to know who they're working with, who they're buying from, to make sure that they have this kind of alignment. So I'm going to close with the 3 takeaways here, which are, I want to say easy, but nothing is ever easy, right? So check your company and product name against the smile and scratch test. Is it a pass? Is it an epic fail? Do you want to keep the name? Do you want to change the name? Strongly recommend getting the book, check it out, read about it. It's a good time as a startup to make this decision. Do we want to keep this company name? Does it reflect who we are? And does it really help us or hurt us along the way? Look at your website homepage, especially the above the fold content. Does it convey who you are and what you do in a clear, concise, and compelling way? Like, for example, I went to a CRO's website. And they're like, "We are a preclinical CRO." And I was like, so what? Like, there's so many CROs out there. Why should I work with this group? There was nothing there to tell me what's different about them, what's unique about them, really what's their identity, to understand, is this what I'm looking for, or am I looking for a different type of CRO? So take this opportunity, visit your website, take a look. And finally, this is a little bit more work, but look at your business plan and your pitch deck. Does it provide the full picture? Are there all the gaps, risks, action plans identified? And really look for at least 5 qualified individuals to give you feedback. This is not, doing it in a vacuum, single, person on an island. Really gather that feedback from people in the space, listen, and to make it better. So that's my last one to close with.
Thank you so much, Sandy. That was a great overview of the several different audiences that I think early stage startups need to keep in mind. And it's not a one size fits all situation. Great. So does anyone have any questions? We've got about 10 minutes. Feel free to jump in with anything. So I do have one question. And something I've been dealing with recently. So if I were to, ask 5 people for advice and get a lot of mixed signals, how do you deal with that?
That's a great question. And you're going to get that a lot because, that goes across the board with your company name, your website, your pitch deck. You will never find something that everybody is going to love and be behind. It's always going to be a mixed bag of feedback. Mm-hmm. The key here is to, first of all, truly listen to all the feedback without getting defensive. Sometimes, startup entrepreneurs and founders get a little defensive. So truly listen, what kind of feedback are they giving you? Second is to look for, are there any common threads, right? That's an obvious one. Are you hearing the same feedback over and over? Then maybe it has a little bit more validity. The third is to, compare it against the content you have. Are they identifying a gap, right? Or are they saying you need to strengthen this point, provide more information? Like, what kind of feedback are they giving you? If they're saying you're not talking about the market problem at all, right? Like that's important feedback to listen to. But when it comes down to kind of the minutia, or I should say, the way you approach it, right? How to say something, you might get different inputs, right? And there, especially if it's a pitch deck, I would say you get to go with your gut, depending on if you're the one who's going to present it, because I feel like delivery is critical. You could put the most beautiful pitch deck together, and if the delivery is going to tank, your whole pitch is going to tank. And I've seen the opposite, where the pitch deck was not great, but the delivery was awesome, right? And that works, because at the end of the day, they want to see that you're passionate about what you're talking about, you know what you're talking about, and you can execute, right? So as long as you demonstrate some of those things, even if the deck is not the most beautiful deck, you're going to be okay. So as you're getting the feedback, think about, how would I say this, right? Would I feel comfortable? Does it come natural to me? Or it's not going to flow very well from my style. So your style of delivery is another criterion to use as you go through feedback. And I know we have a couple of folks who are, just checking stuff out and registered nurse. And another thing I want to say, if you're considering potentially starting a company, make sure you have a business case. That's another thing I see a lot, where, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of commitment, there's a great, cool idea. But at the end of the day, for whatever reason, maybe the market is too small, maybe it's too competitive, right? Where your market share is just going to be diluted down a whole lot. Can you make money, right? Is there truly a business case there? Because that's one that doesn't matter how bad you want it. If the business case is not there, it's just not going to work. And those are hard conversations to have and hard to admit, right? Everybody tells founders, just, persevere is going to work out. The financials have to work, right? So don't ignore that. If it's like right there, like red, lights kind of flashing that this is not looking financially viable, pay attention to that.
Sandy, I think your presentation was terrific. Even an old guy like me who's been doing this a long time, I think it's a beautiful summary of what's really important. But I think there is this conception of a startup as having one idea and maybe 2 or 3 people or one person, and you're going to try to sell that. Most of the companies I've worked on pivoted, moved around a lot. We never really had a single idea, I would say. So it's something I call the West Coast bias. So on the West Coast, you come up with some idea like this dental AI company. And the goal is really to raise money. So you have an idea, you're going to apply AI to dentistry, whatever that means, and you're going to sell your idea. I think that doesn't work on East Coast. Companies aren't like that. You kind of get started and you work and you probably are going to change. So at MDC, we try to be very patient. I mean, the companies that come in, like we have a feeding tube company, they make a new kind of feeding tube. It's not a sexy thing, but people need it. Children die if they don't get it, et cetera, et cetera. But they're going to have to expand around that. They can't just get away with this tube. It's a tube that goes inside another tube. That's the whole thing. You and I personally could make one of those in a weekend. So how are they going to build a business around that? That's the hard part. And they're going to have to provide services and support and all kinds of other things. So standing up there and pitching, these are how many children need this kind of tube. Here are the advantages. Here's the cost savings. That's perfect. But how are they going to make a business out of this idea? And they can, I'm sure of it. I believe in these guys. But it's mostly because they're very determined, they're very resourceful, and they're going to figure out how to get this tube in as many people as possible. And we're going to help them. So it's this sort of thing, the East Coast versus West Coast. I used to think I should just move my company to the West Coast. People give you large amounts of money for nonsense. Well, on the East Coast, we don't do that. We hire people, they work for us for decades, and we try to build things that really help people. It's a different mindset. So, the company I ran for 20 years never had a pitch deck. We just walked in and told people we could make this and asked them if they wanted to buy it. And they would say yes or no. And that's how it worked. So I don't know. I mean, I think I like what you did. It's beautiful. I looked at your own website. It looks like something that could really help me out. But again, this focus on a single idea company and pitching is maybe the wrong focus, I think. It's the focus on the business as an entity. Who are you going to work with? You need a partner. I'm sure you would say that to people. You can't
That's
make
exactly
something by
right.
yourself. Get a partner, somebody you can trust, who will cover for you when you make a mistake or whatever.
That's exactly right. I think you're bringing up a couple of really, really good points here. One about pivoting, and another about exit strategies, right? Not every entrepreneur wants to build a business, all the way to commercialization. Sometimes they might have a technology that really fits in an existing company, right? It could be very, very good technology that really meets a need, but by itself, it's not enough to build a business on. And that's fine. That's when you really want to start those partnership conversations very early and not go too far down the line. Start reaching out, and it's hard, right? When you're talking to strategics, when you're talking to big, companies, it's hard to get their attention sometimes. But really, really try to do that. And the other part is the pivoting, right? Or expanding your technology. You might have this feeding tube, but then you might have other ideas, right? Other technologies that you can start building a company and a platform and a product line with a variety of applications. The pivoting part, I find, and I don't know, maybe the groups you're working with, they're more amenable to it. They have more of that kind of engineering mindset of we'll tweak, we'll change. But a lot of times founders it's like their baby. Their idea is their baby, and they cannot let go of that baby. So it's sometimes it's tough to pivot. But again, if you're keeping in mind that it's not about you, it's about your audience, right? Is there a need? Who's going to use this product? Do they want it, right? Versus not, because it doesn't reflect on you as a person, right? Like sometimes people tie their identity to the business and the company. Like if this product fails, like I have failed, and that's not what it is, right? This product failed because there was no need for it. But you as a person, as an individual, you have ideas, you have team members, you can come up with something, pivot that meets a need, right? So hopefully, with resources like MDC and others out there, you can guide them.
Yeah, I think one question that people should ask themselves, suppose you have a really good product, a really beautiful thing. It can save lives, it's cost effective. If you ask yourself, we're not doing so well now. If I replaced myself, would the business do better? And if you're not willing to do that, you have a problem. So I've replaced myself as CEO 4 times, I think, every time voluntarily, because the person that came in was better than me. They were better at networking. They were more flexible. They led the staff better than I did. So I'm not saying I'm an exemplar, but it's a key thing. One of my best company I think I ever made, TRX Systems, the woman who was running that company replaced herself with someone who's better at networking, at raising money, at doing all the things she didn't want to do. And that's a big thing. Now, in effect, she was still in charge. We could have voted out the CEO in 5 minutes, but that wasn't the point. The front person was better than us. And, and the company did well and grew and, was sold. People made a lot of money. It was a good thing. So you got to think like that. This company's not doing so well, and maybe it could do better if I got rid of myself. Took a different role, maybe is a gentler way of saying that. And I see kind of people you're talking about, academic founders. They don't think like that. They're smarter than you. They're the best person to lead the company. They're geniuses because so many people have told them they're geniuses their whole lives. They make poor founders by and large, right?
I have seen that, but actually less and less more recently. So I'm optimistic.
Good.
I'm
Okay.
optimistic. People have been replacing themselves and a lot of self-awareness, which is great and very important for anybody, really, not just the CEO of the company, but for any role, right? As the company grows, the needs of the company change, the skill sets required change. So being able to adapt to that is pretty important. I haven't looked at the chat. Is there anything there?
No questions, just positive comments.
Thank you, guys. And anybody who wants to get in touch, if you have other questions, if you want me to take a look at something, your website, or do like a quick, feedback session, happy to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sandy. This was really, really helpful.
That was terrific, Sandy. Terrific.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Take
Bye.
care.